Everyone in the Blackwood pack whispered that the alpha son was cursed. They called him the Runt. They said he was born without a wolf, a shame to his bloodline. For 6 years, the boy slept in the freezing cellar, eating scraps, trembling every time his father, Alpha Damon, walked by. Damon looked at his son and saw only weakness, but he wasn't looking close enough. When Sarah Miller, a desperate drifter, took the job as the castle's lowest maid, she didn't listen to the rumors. She just saw a dirty, crying child. But when she gave the boy his first bath in years, her fingers brushed against something hard, hidden deep beneath his matted fur. It wasn't a curse. It was something man-made, and it was going to destroy the entire pack. The rain in Washington state had a way of soaking into your bones, chilling you until you forgot what warmth felt like. Sarah Miller pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders as she stared up at the iron gates of the Blackwood estate. It wasn't just a mansion, it was a fortress nestled deep in the pines, miles away from the nearest town of Forks. Sarah needed this job. Her bank account sat at a grim $14, and her old sedan had finally died 3 miles back. When she saw the flyer in the local diner, help wanted, cleaning staff, live-in required, NDA mandatory, she didn't hesitate. She didn't care that the locals lowered their voices when they talked about the Blackwood family. She didn't care about the rumors of cult-like behavior. She walked up the long driveway, the gravel crunching under her worn boots. The air here smelled different, heavy with pine, wet earth, and something metallic, like ozone before a lightning strike. A man was waiting for her at the servants' entrance. He was tall, wearing a crisp suit that looked expensive, but his eyes were cold. This was Beta Lucas, though Sarah only knew him as the estate manager. "Sarah Miller?" he asked, not looking up from his clipboard. "Yes, sir." "You have no family?" "No." "Next of kin listed?" "No, sir, just me." Lucas looked up, then a strange glint in his eyes. "Good. The pay is $2,000 a week, room and board included. You keep your head down, you don't speak to the family unless spoken to, and you never, under any circumstances, go to the West Wing unless ordered. Do you understand?" "Yes," Sarah breathed. $2,000 a week was life-changing money. "I understand." "Your assignment is the basement laundry and kennel maintenance," Lucas said, his lip curling slightly at the word kennel. Sarah frowned slightly. "Kennel? I thought this was housekeeping." "The Alpha, Mr. Blackwood, keeps a pet, a difficult one. The previous maids couldn't handle the smell. If you can clean the creature and its quarters without vomiting, you keep the job." Sarah nodded. She had grown up on a farm. She could handle animals. But she wasn't prepared for what she found in the basement. It wasn't a standard finished basement. It was a dungeon disguised as a storage area. The stone walls were damp, and there was a heavy iron door at the far end. The smell hit her first. Ammonia, rotting straw, and the copper tang of old blood. "In there," Lucas said, unlocking the heavy door. "Feed it, wash the floor, don't touch it if you value your fingers." Lucas turned and left, locking the outer door behind him. Sarah was alone. She pushed open the iron door. The room was dark, lit only by a single flickering bulb. In the corner, huddled on a pile of filthy rags, was a small, trembling ball of gray fur. It looked like a wolf, but it was wrong. It was too small, its limbs twisted and thin, its ribs pushed against its skin so sharply it looked like a skeleton draped in a rug. It didn't growl when she entered. It whimpered, a high, pitiful sound that broke Sarah's heart instantly. "Hey there," she whispered, stepping forward. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature flinched, scrambling backward until its back hit the cold stone wall. It had human eyes. That was the most disturbing part. Bright, terrified blue eyes that looked shockingly intelligent. Sarah set down the bucket of water she had been given. "They treat you like a monster, don't they?" she murmured. She noticed a bowl on the floor filled with what looked like raw, spoiling chicken guts, and they feed you garbage. This wasn't just animal cruelty. This felt personal. Over the next week, Sarah fell into a routine. She scrubbed the floors until her hands were raw. She stole fresh meat from the kitchen, ham, beef, even a steak once, and smuggled it down to the basement. The dog, as the other staff called him, began to trust her. She named him Shadow, though she later learned his name was Toby. But the more time she spent with him, the more she realized something was deeply wrong with the Blackwood house. One evening, while scrubbing the grand staircase, she saw the master of the house, Alpha Damon Blackwood. He was a terrifyingly handsome man, standing 6'5" with broad shoulders and an aura of power that made the air vibrate. Beside him stood his wife, Vanessa. She was beautiful, with platinum blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The runt was howling again last night," Vanessa complained, sipping a glass of wine. "It's disturbing my sleep, Damon. Perhaps it's time we put him down. He's 6 years old and hasn't shifted back to human form once. He's a feral mistake." Sarah froze, her rag hovering over the banister. "Shifted back to human form?" Damon's face darkened. A look of profound pain crossed his features, quickly replaced by a mask of cold indifference. "He is my son, Vanessa. Broken or not, we do not kill our own blood." "He isn't your blood," Vanessa hissed. "Not really. If he were a true alpha son, he wouldn't be stuck in that pathetic wolf form, unable to speak, unable to grow. He's a genetic defect, a punishment for your first wife's weakness." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. The dog in the basement? The creature was a child, a human child stuck in a wolf's body. She rushed down to the basement that night, her hands shaking. She unlocked the door and fell to her knees on the rags. The small gray wolf lifted his head, his blue eyes filled with exhaustion. "You're a boy," Sarah whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "Oh my God, you're just a boy." The wolf rested his chin on her knee and let out a long, shuddering sigh. It was then that Sarah noticed the smell wasn't just dirt, it was infection. The fur around the wolf's neck and spine was matted with dried pus and bled. "We need to get you clean," Sarah said, her voice trembling but determined. "I don't care what Lucas says, you are taking a bath." She didn't know that this simple act of kindness was about to sign her death warrant or save them all. Getting a terrified, traumatized wolf into a laundry tub wasn't easy. Toby, Sarah refused to think of him as the runt anymore, was dead weight. He was too weak to walk more than a few steps. Sarah had to carry him, his bony body feeling impossibly light in her arms. She filled the deep utility sink with warm water, adding some of her own lavender body wash. When she lowered him in, he panicked for a second, his claws scrabbling against the porcelain. "Shh, it's okay," she cooed, pouring warm water over his back. "It feels good, see? Just warm water." The dirt that came off him turned the water black instantly. Sarah had to drain and refill the tub 3 times as the layers of filth washed away. The true state of his condition became clear. He wasn't just skinny, he was emaciated. His fur was patchy, falling out in clumps, but it was his spine that drew her attention. Along the ridge of his back, right where the vertebrae met the neck, the skin was angry and inflamed. There were strange, hard lumps under the skin. Boils, she thought at first, or tumors. "Does this hurt?" she asked softly, gently pressing the sponge near the lumps. Toby whimpered, his entire body seizing up. He let out a low, guttural whine that sounded like a scream trapped in a throat that couldn't speak. I'm sorry, she soothed, "but I have to clean it. It's infected." She took a pair of tweezers from her pocket. She had brought them to pull out a splinter from the floorboards and parted the wet fur. The skin was hot to the touch. She looked closer. There was something glinting in the center of the largest lump. It didn't look like a natural growth. It looked metallic. Sarah's heart raced. She grabbed a flashlight from the shelf and shone it directly onto the wound. It was silver. A thin silver wire was protruding from the skin, barely a millimeter visible. Sarah knew the legends. Everyone in Washington knew the folklore about the clans in the woods. Silver was poison to wolves. It burned them. It stopped them from healing. "Who did this to you?" she breathed. The wolf trembled violently. Sarah knew she had to get it out. If it stayed in, the infection would kill him. "Toby, listen to me," she said, grabbing his muzzle gently so he had to look at her. "I'm going to take this out. It's going to hurt a lot, but then it will stop burning. Do you trust me?" The wolf stared at her. For a second, the animal instinct seemed to fade, and she saw the terrified 6-year-old boy behind the eyes. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Sarah sterilized the tweezers with a lighter. Her hands were shaking. She took a deep breath, clamped the tweezers around the tiny silver tip, and pulled. It didn't come out easily. It was barbed. Toby didn't howl. He screamed, a high-pitched, human-sounding scream that shattered the silence of the basement. Sarah yanked hard. The object slid out with a sickening squelch, followed by a burst of black blood and pus. She dropped it into the metal sink. Clink. It wasn't a splinter. It was a needle. A 4-inch-long silver needle etched with microscopic runes. It had been driven straight down between his vertebrae, directly into the nerve cluster that controlled his shifting ability. Sarah stared at it in horror. This wasn't accidental. This was surgical. Someone had hammered this needle into a child's spine to lock him in his wolf form, to keep him in constant agony, and to make him appear weak. But she wasn't done. She ran her hands down his back. Another lump, another, and another. There were 7 of them, 7 silver spikes driven into the alpha sun to destroy him from the inside out. "Oh, God!" Sarah sobbed, clutching the wet, shivering wolf to her chest. "They're torturing you!" Suddenly, the heavy door to the laundry room banged open. Sarah spun around, placing her body between Toby and the intruder. It was Dr. Eris, the pack doctor. He was a small, oily man with round glasses and a nervous twitch. He stared at the clean wolf, the bloody water, and the silver needle sitting in the sink. His face went pale. "What are you doing?" Dr. Eris hissed, slamming the door behind him and locking it. "You stupid girl! Do you have any idea what you've done?" "He had a needle in his spine," Sarah yelled, her fear replaced by a motherly rage she didn't know she possessed. "Look at it! Someone put silver in him!" Dr. Eris rushed forward, grabbing the needle and shoving it into his pocket. "You saw nothing. Do you hear me? You saw nothing." "Why?" Sarah demanded. "Does his father know? Does Alpha Damon know his son is being tortured?" Dr. Eris laughed a dry, humorless sound. "Damon thinks the boy is a genetic failure. He thinks the boy's wolf is too weak to sustain a human form. He has no idea." "Then I'm going to tell him," Sarah said, making a move for the door. Dr. Eris caught her arm. His grip was shockingly strong. "If you tell Damon, Vanessa will kill you before you finish the sentence, and then she will kill the boy." "Who do you think paid me to put the needles in, Sarah?" Sarah froze. The beautiful blonde Luna, the stepmother. "Vanessa," Sarah whispered. "She wants her own son, the one currently in her womb, to be the alpha heir." Dr. Eris whispered frantically. "Toby is in the way, but she couldn't just kill him. Damon would investigate. So she made him defective, a disappointment." He looked at Toby, who was panting on the floor, the wound on his neck already beginning to close now that the silver was gone. "You have to put it back," Iris said, his voice shaking. "No!" Sarah screamed. "If Damon sees him healing, if he sees him getting stronger, Vanessa will know the block is gone. She will come down here and snap his neck." Sarah looked at the boy. The pain in his eyes was receding, replaced by a flicker of hope. She couldn't put that torture device back in him. She wouldn't. "No," Sarah said firmly. "We hide it. We leave the other 6 needles for now. I'll take them out one by one, slowly over weeks. We tell no one, but I am not putting that back in him." Dr. Eris wiped sweat from his forehead. "You're playing a dangerous game, girl. If Vanessa smells his scent changing, we are all dead." "Then I'll mask his scent," Sarah said. She didn't know how she knew to say that or how she would do it, but she looked down at the dirty laundry pile. "I'll cover him in bleach and sulfur, in whatever I have to, but he is going to heal." And then she looked up at the ceiling toward the grand bedrooms where Damon and Vanessa slept. "And then he's going to take his kingdom back." For the next 3 weeks, Sarah lived a double life. By day, she was the quiet, invisible maid, scrubbing the floors of Blackwood Manor. She kept her head down when Vanessa walked by, ignoring the woman's cruel remarks about the stink coming from the basement. By night, she was a surgeon and a guardian. Every 3rd night, under the cover of the deafening rainstorms, she and Dr. Eris, who had been coerced into helping out of fear of being exposed, removed another needle. It was grueling. Toby suffered through every extraction, biting down on a leather strap Sarah provided to keep from screaming. But with every needle removed, the change was miraculous. His fur, once patchy and gray, began to thicken. It turned a deep, lustrous black, the same color as Alpha Damon's wolf. His muscles, no longer poisoned by the constant flow of silver into his bloodstream, began to swell and strengthen. He grew 3 inches in height in 2 weeks. But the most dangerous change was his eyes. The fear was gone, yet its place was a simmering, intelligent rage. "He's getting too big to hide," Dr. Eris whispered one night as he stitched up the wound from the 4th needle. This one had been lodged near his tailbone. "Damon is coming down for the monthly inspection tomorrow." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Inspection?" "Damon comes down once a month to look at the boy, to see if he's dying. He can't see him like this," Sarah said. Toby was currently standing upright on his hind legs, his front paws resting on the sink, drinking water like a man. He looked powerful. He looked like an alpha. "We have to make him look sick," Sarah said. The next morning, Sarah worked frantically. She rubbed mud and charcoal into his shiny new coat to dull it. She instructed him to hunch his shoulders, to limp, to keep his head down. "You have to pretend, Toby," she whispered, cupping his furry face. "You have to be the runt one last time for me, please." Toby whined and licked her hand. He understood. At noon, the heavy iron door creaked open. Alpha Damon walked in. He was wearing a dark suit, his presence filling the small, damp room. The air instantly felt heavier, charged with the immense power of an Alpha Prime. Behind him came Vanessa, looking bored, checking her nails. "Let's get this over with, Damon," she sighed. "It smells like death in here." Damon ignored her. He stepped forward, his eyes locking on to the huddled form in the corner. Sarah stood by the wall, trying to make herself invisible. Damon crouched down. Toby, the wolf. Toby let out a pathetic wheezing cough. He dragged his back leg as he crawled forward, keeping his belly low to the dirty ground. He played the part perfectly. Damon's face twisted in anguish. He reached out a hand to touch the wolf's head. Sarah held her breath. If Damon touched him, he would feel the muscle definition under the mud. He would feel the heat of a healing wolf, not the cold clamminess of a dying one. "Don't touch it, Damon," Vanessa warned sharply. "You'll get fleas or worse." Damon's hand hovered inches from his son's head. He looked torn. He wanted to comfort his child, but he was repulsed by the weakness he perceived. "He's suffering," Damon murmured. "Vanessa is right. Perhaps mercy is the only option left," Sarah gasped. She couldn't help it. The sound echoed in the stone room. Damon's head snapped toward her. His eyes were glowing a faint amber. "You, Maid, what is your name?" "Sarah, sir," she squeaked. "Has he been eating?" A little, sir." He struggles. Damon stood up, towering over her. He looked at Sarah. Really, looked at her for the first time. He sniffed the air. "You smell like him," Damon said, his voice low. "You smell like lavender and wolf." "I wash him, sir. I try to keep him clean." Damon stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. There was a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He could smell something else on her, the scent of the pack doctor, the scent of antiseptic, and something fainter, the scent of silver. "Come, Damon," Vanessa said, grabbing his arm. "The ultrasound technician is arriving at 1. You don't want to miss seeing your real heir." The mention of the unborn baby distracted him. Damon cast one last sorrowful look at Toby, turned on his heel, and left. As the door clicked shut, Sarah slid down the wall, exhaling a breath she felt she'd been holding for 10 minutes. Toby stood up, shaking off the act. He trotted over to Sarah and nudged her hand with his wet nose. Then he did something he had never done before. He opened his mouth, his vocal cords straining against years of disuse. "Shh." Sarah's eyes widened. "Toby?" "Shh. Rah." He spoke. It was raspy, barely a whisper, but it was human speech coming from a wolf's mouth. "Thank you." Sarah burst into tears, burying her face in his neck. They had survived the inspection, but time was running out. There were 3 needles left, and the last one was the biggest. It was lodged at the base of his skull, right at the brainstem. Dr. Aris had warned her, removing the final needle will trigger the shift instantly. The energy release will be massive. We can't hide that. When we pull, that needle war begins. The 5th and 6th needles were extracted in a blur of agony and blood. Each time, Toby recovered faster. His wolf form was now unrecognizable from the trembling creature Sarah had found weeks ago. He was massive, his shoulders broad, his coat a midnight black that seemed to absorb the dim light of the cellar bulb. He was no longer a runt, he was a predator in waiting, but the secrets were becoming impossible to keep. Sarah was exhausted. The double life was draining the color from her face. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were constantly stained with the scent of bleach, which she used to mask the metallic tang of Toby's healing blood. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the mistake happened. Sarah was in the kitchen preparing the dog food, a ruse she maintained by chopping up prime beef and hiding it under a layer of cheap kibble. She was moving quickly, nervous, because the house was buzzing with activity. The annual pack gathering was approaching, a night when the elite families of the region would come to Blackwood Manor. "You spoil that beast," a voice drawled from the doorway. Sarah jumped, nearly dropping the knife. It was Beta Lucas. He was leaning against the doorframe, watching her with narrowed eyes. He needs strength, sir," Sarah stammered. "He needs to be put down," Lucas said, walking over. He looked into the bowl. "Steak for a genetic defect?" He reached out and grabbed Sarah's wrist. His grip was bruising. "You've been spending a lot of time down there, Sarah. Dr. Iris has been seen going down there too. What are you two doing?" Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "Nothing. The doctor was checking for fleas. We didn't want them spreading to the main house." Lucas sniffed her. He leaned in close, his nose brushing her neck. Sarah shuddered, repulsed. "You smell like Alpha," Lucas whispered, pulling back with a frown. "Not Damon, but similar, stronger." Before Sarah could invent a lie, the kitchen intercom buzzed. It was Vanessa. "Lucas, get up here, now!" Lucas released Sarah's arm, giving her one last suspicious glare. "We aren't done, Miller. If I find out you're breeding that thing or doing something twisted, I'll throw you in the cage with him." He left. Sarah slumped against the counter, gasping for air. They were running out of time. Lucas suspected if he told Vanessa it was over. She grabbed a bowl and rushed down to the basement. She found Dr. Aris already there, pacing nervously. Toby was pacing too, his claws clicking rhythmically on the stone. "We have to do it tonight," Dr. Aris said, his face pale and sweaty. "The extraction, the final needle." "Tonight?" Sarah hissed. "We can't. Damon is hosting a dinner for the elders tonight. The house is full of guards." It has to be tonight, Dr. Aris snapped. Vanessa cornered me. She asked for my medical logs. She knows I've been stealing anesthesia. She's going to audit the basement supplies tomorrow morning. If she finds the boy alive and healing, she will kill us all. Sarah looked at Toby. The wolf stopped pacing and looked at her. His blue eyes were clear and terrified, but he nodded. He was ready. The final needle, Sarah whispered, remembering the X-ray Dr. Aris had sketched out. The one in the brainstem. It's the kill switch, Aris explained, his voice trembling. It blocks the connection between his wolf spirit and his human consciousness. When we pull it, the barrier breaks. The shift will be violent. It will be loud, and the energy release, it will be like a bomb going off in the spiritual plane. Every wolf in a 10-mile radius will feel it. So we can't hide it, Sarah said. No, Aris said grimly. Once that needle is out, there is no more hiding. He either rises as the alpha or Vanessa's guards tear us apart before he can stand. Sarah squared her shoulders. She looked at the 7-year-old boy trapped in the wolf's body. She had come here for a paycheck, but she was staying for him. She loved him like the son she never had. Okay, Sarah said, locking the heavy iron door and sliding the deadbolt. Let's make history. The dinner party upstairs was in full swing. Through the thick stone ceiling, the muffled sounds of string quartets and laughter drifted down to the dungeon. It was a grotesque contrast, clinking champagne glasses above, life or death surgery below. Toby lay on the makeshift operating table, a stack of pallets covered in clean sheets. Dr. Aris had sedated him heavily, but the wolf's eyes were still open, glazed and watching. This is it, Aris whispered. He held the scalpel. The needle is buried deep at the base of the skull, right where the spine meets the cranium. I have to cut through the muscle to reach the head of the pin. Sarah held Toby's head steady. I'm here, Toby. I'm right here. Aris made the incision. Toby growled a low rumble that vibrated through the table despite the drugs. Blood welled up, dark and thick. I see it, Aris said, his voice tight. God, it's hooked around the nerve. If I pull this wrong, I paralyze him. If I pull it too slow, the silver poison floods his brain and kills him. Just pull it, Sarah urged, wiping sweat from the doctor's forehead. Do it. Aris took the heavy surgical pliers. He clamped onto the silver end protruding from the bloody incision. On 3, Aris counted. 1, 2... The door to the basement rattled. Someone was trying the handle. Open this door. It was Lucas. His voice was muffled but angry. Sarah, I know you're in there. Aris froze. He has a key. Pull it, Sarah screamed. 3! Aris yanked with all his strength. A sound tore through the room that Sarah would never forget. It wasn't a howl. It was the sound of bones snapping and reforming, a wet, crunching explosion of anatomy rearranging itself. Toby arched his back so violently he nearly threw Sarah off the table. The silver needle, 5 inches long and hooked like a fishing lure, flew out and clattered across the floor. The reaction was instantaneous. A shockwave of invisible energy blasted outward from the boy's body. The light bulbs shattered, plunging them into darkness. The bottles of bleach on the shelf exploded. Sarah was thrown backward against the wall, the wind knocked out of her. Upstairs, the music stopped. The energy wave was so strong it had likely cracked the foundation of the house. In the darkness of the cellar, a golden light began to glow. It wasn't a lamp, it was Toby. His body was contorting, the fur receding into the skin, the snout shortening, the paws elongating into hands. The sound of cracking bones was sickening. Pop, crack, snap. Lucas is coming, Aris screamed, fumbling in the dark. The iron door groaned as a heavy weight slammed into it. Then again, bang! Sarah! The voice was weak but human. Sarah scrambled through the broken glass to the table. The golden glow faded, revealing a small, naked form lying on the bloody sheets. It was a boy. He was thin, pale, and covered in sweat and blood, but he was human. He had dark hair like Damon and the same sharp jawline. He looked to be about 7 years old. He opened his eyes. They were glowing a vibrant electric violet, the mark of an alpha prime. Sarah, Toby whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. I've got you, Sarah sobbed, wrapping her cardigan around his shivering body. I've got you. The lock on the door shattered, the heavy iron doors swung open, hitting the stone wall with a deafening crash. Lucas stood in the doorway, a flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Behind him stood two other guards, large men with assault rifles. Lucas swept the light over the room. It landed on Dr. Eris, cowering in the corner. Then it moved to the table. Lucas saw the blood. He saw the piles of black fur shed on the floor. And then he saw the boy. For a second, Lucas looked confused. He had expected a monster. He had expected a dead dog. He was not expecting a human child with violet eyes. "What is this?" Lucas growled, stepping into the room. He raised his gun. "What kind of sorcery is this?" "Don't touch him!" Sarah shrieked, shielding Toby with her body.
"Move, Maid," Lucas commanded, clicking the safety off. Vanessa said to eliminate any problems. This looks like a big problem. "Lucas, look at him," Sarah yelled. "Look at his face. He's not a stranger. He's Damon's son." Lucas hesitated. He shone the light on Toby's face again. The resemblance was undeniable. "Shoot them," a cold voice came from the hallway. Vanessa stepped into the light. She was wearing a stunning red evening gown, diamonds glittering at her throat. Her face was a mask of pure hatred. She didn't look shocked. She looked annoyed. "Vanessa," Dr. Eris pleaded, "please." "You failed me, doctor," she said smoothly. "Lucas must kill them all, the maid, the doctor, and the thing. Tell Damon the wolf went raid and attacked the staff. Make it look messy." Lucas looked at the Luna, then at the child. He tightened his grip on the rifle. "Sorry, kid." He aimed at Sarah's chest. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, hugging Toby tight. At least he died human, she thought. At least he's free. Growl! The sound didn't come from Toby. It didn't come from Lucas. It came from the top of the stairs, a low, thunderous rumble that shook the dust from the ceiling rafters. Lucas froze. Vanessa spun around. Standing at the top of the basement stairs, silhouetted by the light from the hallway, was a monster. But this wasn't a wolf. It was Alpha Damon Blackwood. He was in his human form, but his eyes were burning pools of liquid gold, and his canines were fully extended. He had felt the energy wave. He had felt his son return to the world, and now he smelled the intent to kill. The silence in the basement was absolute. Even the dripping water seemed to pause. Damon descended the stairs slowly. Every step was a hammer blow of intimidation. He didn't look at Sarah. He didn't look at Eris. His gaze was fixed entirely on Lucas and the gun pointed at his son. "Drop it," Damon said. His voice was dangerously quiet. Lucas's hands were shaking so hard the flashlight beam danced wildly on the walls. "Alpha, Vanessa said. "I said drop it," Damon roared, the sound amplifying with Alpha command. Lucas dropped the rifle. The other two guards threw theirs down instantly, falling to their knees in submission. Damon reached the bottom of the stairs. He walked past Vanessa as if she didn't exist. He walked straight to the table where Sarah was holding the boy. Sarah looked up, terrified. "Don't hurt him, please. He's just a boy." Damon looked down at the child. Toby looked back, his violet eyes meeting his father's gold ones. Slowly, Damon reached out a hand. This time, there was no hesitation. He placed his large, warm hand on Toby's cheek. He brushed a thumb over the boy's grime-streaked face. "Toby," Damon choked out. "Hi, Dad," Toby rasped. Damon's knees gave out. The Alpha King, the man who made entire packs tremble, fell to his knees beside the dirty pallet table and buried his face in his son's small chest. A sob racked his body, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief. "I thought I lost you," Damon wept. "I thought you were gone." "She hurt me," Toby whispered, lifting a finger to point at Vanessa. "She put the metal in me." Damon went still. The sobbing stopped abruptly. When Damon stood up, the air temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He turned to face his wife. The look on his face was no longer human. It was a promise of violence. "Damon, wait!"
Vanessa stammered, backing away until she hit the stone wall. "The boy is lying. He's confused. It's a trick. That maid is a witch. She's doing this to trick you." Damon walked over to the sink. He reached in and picked up the bloody 4-inch silver needle that Eris had just extracted. He held it up to the light. "Silver," Damon said, his voice void of emotion, etched with suppression runes. "Dr. Eris?" Eris scrambled forward on his knees. "She made me do it, Alpha. She threatened my family. She made me implant them when he was a baby to stop his shifting. She wanted him to look like a runt so you would reject him." Damon looked at the needle, then at Vanessa. "You tortured my son," Damon said, "for 6 years. You let him sleep in filth. You let him starve, and you drove spikes into his spine." "I did it for us," Vanessa shrieked, realizing her cover was blown. She pointed at her pregnant belly. "I did it for our son, your true heir, not that weakling from your first wife." "Lucas," Damon said. "Yes, Alpha," Lucas barked, eager to switch sides to save his own skin. "Take my wife to the cells." "No!" Vanessa screamed. "I am the Luna. You can't." "You are nothing," Damon snarled. "You are stripped of your rank. You are stripped of your name. If you weren't carrying an innocent child, I would rip your throat out right here." He turned to the guards. "Take her and lock Dr. Eris in the cell next to her. I will deal with him later." As Vanessa was dragged away, screaming curses at Sarah, the basement finally went quiet. Damon turned back to the table. He took off his suit jacket and wrapped his jacket around Toby, lifting the boy effortlessly into his arms. Toby buried his face in his father's neck, finally safe. Damon looked at Sarah. She was standing by the sink, shaking, covered in blood and grime. She looked ready to collapse. "Sarah Miller," Damon said. "Yes, Alpha," she whispered. "You knew the penalty for touching the Alpha heir without permission is death." Sarah nodded slowly. "I knew, and you did it anyway." "He was hurting," she said simply. "He was just a baby." Damon stared at her with an intensity that made her blush. "You saved his life. You saved the future of this pack. There is no debt I can repay. That will be enough." He walked over to her with one arm holding his son. He reached out and offered his other arm to her. "Come," Damon said. "No one sleeps in the cellar tonight. You are done cleaning floors." "Am I?" Sarah asked, confused. "Yes," Damon said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Because as of this moment, you are the governess of the air and the only woman in this house I trust." Sarah took his arm. They walked out of the dungeon together, leaving the darkness behind, ascending the stairs toward the light of the main house. But as they reached the top of the stairs, the front doors of the manor blew open. A man stumbled in, bloody and breathless. It was a sentry from the perimeter. "Alpha!" the sentry grasped. "The western border! It's breached!" Damon stiffened. "By who?" "Rogues!" the sentry wheezed. "Hundreds of them, and they're led by someone claiming to be Vanessa's brother." Damon looked down at the terrified Toby in his arms, and then at Sarah. The internal war was over, but the external war had just begun.
And Sarah, the farm girl with nothing to her name, was standing right in the center of the battlefield. The peaceful illusion of the dinner party shattered instantly. The grand ballroom moments ago, filled with the soft hum of string music and clinking crystal, erupted into chaos. The sounds of breaking glass and snarling wolves echoed from the front foyer. "Secure the guests," Damon roared, his voice booming over the panic. He didn't shift yet. He needed to issue commands. "Lucas, redeem yourself. Take the Gamma unit and hold the west wing. Do not let them reach the stairs." Lucas, pale but determined to avoid execution, nodded and sprinted off, barking orders to the remaining loyal guards. Damon turned to Sarah. His golden eyes were blazing with a mixture of fury and fear. Fear not for himself, but for the two people standing in front of him.
Sarah, listen to me closely, Damon said, gripping her shoulders. There is a safe room behind the library bookshelf. It's reinforced steel. Take Toby, lock yourselves in. Do not open that door unless you hear my voice. Do you understand? I'm not leaving you, Sarah said, her voice trembling but fierce. You have to, Damon said, his voice softening. He looked at Toby, who was clinging to Sarah's leg, his violet eyes wide. He is the target. Vanessa's brother, Victor, is a warmonger. If he kills Toby, he kills the bloodline. You are the only one I trust to keep him alive. Damon leaned down and kissed Toby's forehead. Be brave, son. Then he looked at Sarah. For a fleeting second, the hard alpha mask slipped, and she saw a man who was terrified of losing the only light he had found in years. Go! Sarah grabbed Toby's hand. Come on! They ran through the chaotic hallways. Servants were screaming, fleeing towards the exits. Sarah ducked into the library, her heart hammering against her ribs. She found the false book on the shelf, The History of the Northern Packs, and pulled it. The heavy oak bookcase swung open, revealing a steel door. She shoved Toby inside and followed, pulling the bookcase shut just as the library doors burst open. Through the crack in the shelf before the steel door sealed, Sarah saw them. Rogues. They were massive, scarred wolves, their fur matted with mud and blood. They weren't fighting with honor, they were tearing the room apart. Sarah engaged the electronic lock. Click, whir, thud. They were safe, but they were trapped. Inside the safe room, silence reigned. It was a stark contrast to the violence outside. The room was stocked with water rations and monitors showing security feeds of the house. Sarah pulled Toby onto a cot. It's okay, your dad is going to handle it. Toby looked at the monitors. Look! Sarah looked at the screen. The feed from the main foyer showed a bloodbath. Damon had shifted. His wolf was enormous, a midnight black beast standing nearly 5 feet at the shoulder. He was a blur of violence, tearing through the rogue wolves like they were made of paper. But there were too many of them. And then on the screen, Sarah saw him. Victor. He was in human form, walking calmly through the carnage. He was a giant of a man carrying a serrated silver broadsword. He wasn't fighting the wolves. He was heading straight for the stairs. He's coming for us, Toby whispered. Sarah checked the other monitors. The library feed was dead, static. He knows where the safe room is, Sarah realized with a jolt of horror. Vanessa must have told him. She looked around the room for a weapon. There was a gun rack, but she didn't know how to use an assault rifle. She saw a display case with an antique silver dagger. She smashed the glass with the butt of the rifle and grabbed the dagger. Toby, get behind the cot, Sarah ordered. I can fight, Toby said, his small fists clenched. No, you can't. You're 7 years old and you just healed. Hide. Suddenly, the steel door shuddered. Boom! Someone was using a battering ram or explosives. Boom! The metal buckled inward. The electronic lock sparked and died. With a final screeching tear of metal, the door was ripped off its hinges. Victor stood in the doorway, dusting debris off his leather coat. He smiled, revealing teeth filed into points. Well, well, Victor drawled, stepping into the safe room. The maid and the monster. Vanessa said you were a nuisance. Sarah stood her ground, holding the silver dagger out with a shaking hand. Get back! Victor laughed. That's cute. He moved faster than Sarah could track. He backhanded her, sending her flying across the room. She hit the wall hard, the dagger skittering across the floor. Sarah! Toby screamed. Victor grabbed Toby by the throat and lifted him into the air. Toby kicked and clawed, but he was tiny compared to the rogue alpha. So this is the true heir, Victor sneered, tightening his grip. You don't look like much, just a little pup. Put him down, Sarah gasped, trying to stand up, her vision swimming. I will, Victor said in a grave voice. He reached for his sword. But he had forgotten who Toby was. He wasn't just a child. He was an Alpha Prime who had survived 7 years of torture. His will was iron. Toby stopped struggling. He looked Victor straight in the eye. His violet eyes began to glow with blinding intensity. "Drop me." The voice didn't sound like a child. It sounded like a legion of ancestors speaking at once. It was the Alpha command, pure and unfiltered. Victor's eyes widened. His hand, against his own will, opened. Toby dropped to the floor. "Kneel," Toby commanded. Victor's knees buckled. He slammed onto the floor, struggling against the invisible weight of the command. "How?" he choked out. "You're a child." "I am the king's son," Toby roared. The distraction was enough. Sarah had crawled to the dagger. With a scream of pure adrenaline, she lunged. She didn't aim for the heart. She aimed for the hamstring. She drove the silver dagger deep into Victor's leg. Victor howled the pain, breaking the trance of the Alpha command. He spun around, backhanding Sarah again, sending her crashing into the monitors. He raised his sword to strike her. Then a black shadow eclipsed the doorway. There was no roar, no warning, just death. Damon launched himself into the room. He didn't shift back to human form. He hit Victor with the force of a freight train. The two alphas crashed through the safe room wall, tumbling back into the library. Sarah pulled herself up, grabbing Toby, and looked through the hole in the wall. The fight was brutal. Victor was strong, but Damon was fighting for his family. Damon's wolf was a whirlwind of teeth and claws. He dodged Victor's sword, ducked under a swing, and locked his jaws around Victor's sword arm. Snap! Victor screamed as his arm was shattered. The sword fell. Damon shifted. He stood over Victor, naked, bloody, and terrifying. He placed his foot on Victor's chest. "You came into my house," Damon panted, his voice guttural. "You threatened my mate. You touched my son." "She's not your mate," Victor wheezed, blood bubbling from his lips. "She's a human." Damon looked back at the shattered safe room. He saw Sarah, bruised and bleeding, holding Toby. She looked back at him, her eyes filled with love and fear. "She is my queen," Damon said softly. He looked back down at Victor. "And you are trespassing." Damon delivered the final blow. The silence that followed was heavy. The fighting outside had stopped. The rogue wolves, sensing their leader's death, had either fled or surrendered. Damon didn't move for a moment. Then he turned and walked toward the safe room. He collapsed to his knees in front of Sarah. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands hovering over her bruised cheek. "Did he—" "We're okay," Sarah whispered. She wrapped her arms around his bloody neck. "We're okay. Toby saved me." Damon looked at his son, who was standing tall, his violet eyes fading back to normal blue. "I used the voice, Dad," Toby said, his voice trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. "I made him kneel." Damon pulled them both into a crushing hug. "You are a true alpha, my son, stronger than I ever was." Sarah rested her head on Damon's shoulder, closing her eyes. The nightmare was over. The winter snow had melted, giving way to a vibrant, blooming spring. Blackwood Manor no longer looked like a fortress of gloom. The windows were open, letting in the fresh mountain air. The gardens, once neglected, were full of flowers. Sarah stood on the balcony watching the training grounds below. Toby was down there. He was running an obstacle course, laughing as he vaulted over a log. He had gained 20 pounds of healthy muscle. His coat was shiny, his smile bright. He was just a normal 7-year-old boy now, who happened to be the heir to the most powerful pack in North America. "He's getting fast," a deep voice rumbled behind her. Sarah smiled and leaned back as Damon wrapped his arms around her waist. He looked different too. The shadows under his eyes were gone. He smiled more. "He takes after his father," Sarah said. "And his mother," Damon corrected gently. He turned her around. "The council left an hour ago. The trial is over." "And Vanessa?" Sarah asked, her stomach tightening slightly at the name. Exiled to the Badlands, Damon said. Without her wolf, she will spend the rest of her days as a human, surviving on scraps. A fitting punishment, I thought. And Dr. Eris? Prison for life. He is currently serving the pack by scrubbing the kennels. I thought you would appreciate the irony. Sarah laughed. I do. Damon's expression turned serious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sarah, when you came here, you had nothing. You were running from a world that didn't want you, and I was a man living in a house that was a tomb. He opened the box. Inside sat a ring, not a diamond, but a rare, shimmering moonstone set in silver filigree. This is the Luna's ring, Damon said softly. It hasn't been worn in 100 years. My grandmother wore it. My first wife, she never earned it, and Vanessa certainly never deserved it. He looked into her eyes. You are the only one who has ever been brave enough to clean the monster's fur. You saved my son. You saved my soul. I don't care that you're human. The pack adores you. Toby needs you. And he took a breath. I love you, Sarah. Will you be my Luna? Will you be my wife? Sarah looked at the ring, then at the man who had gone from a terrifying beast to her partner. She looked down at the garden where Toby had stopped running and was looking up at them, giving them a double thumbs up. Tears pricked her eyes. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was home. Yes, Sarah whispered. Yes, Alpha, I will. Damon slipped the ring onto her finger. He kissed her, a deep, passionate kiss that signaled the end of the dark days and the beginning of the golden era of the Blackwood Pack. Far below, the pack members who were training stopped and howled a joyous, unified sound that echoed through the mountains, welcoming their new queen. The runt was gone, the king had returned, and the maid who saved them all had finally found her crown. Sarah Miller didn't have magic or claws or money. All she had was a bucket of warm water and a heart that refused to look away from suffering. In a world of monsters, she showed that the strongest power isn't the ability to kill, it's the courage to care. She pulled the silver from the wound and healed a king. It makes you wonder, how many people do we walk past every day who are suffering in silence, just waiting for someone to stop and offer a kind hand? What would you have done if you were Sarah? Would you have risked your life for the Alpha's son, or would you have walked away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with a friend who loves a good romance with a twist. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next saga. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next saga.